Now, right across Australia, Chris Smith filling in for Alan Jones.
Good morning and welcome along. Great to have you with us and hope you're well on this 14th day of December 2017. Only 11 sleeps until Christmas. Someone had to start that sort of countdown. 11 sleeps. Never enough time, is there? I hope you're getting through all of that. And before your Christmas preparations continue, you'd better prepare for what is due today, especially in places around Sydney and Canberra. A hot day. And I don't just mean H-O-T, I mean capital H-O-T. Let's have a look at what's happening. Firstly, no rain at all yesterday. The top temperature in New South Wales, 43 at Wilcannia, 43. The low of 9 at Perisher, and away from the snowies, it was 13 at Braidwood. The top in Queensland, 44.5 at Birdsville. There won't be too many birds at Birdsville at 44.5, and the low of 15 at Kingaroy. Now, the sun rose in Sydney at 5:38, and it's a very clear sky in Sydney from what I can see looking out of the window where I'm broadcasting from. It rises in Brisbane at 4:47 in around about 7 minutes from now, and a mixed bag on the national weather front, but a stinker in Sydney with a total fire ban. A shower or two and a possible storm in Darwin, a shower or two in Hobart, the chance of a shower in Melbourne after they had a very hot day yesterday. Partly cloudy in Canberra and Adelaide. They'll appreciate the sun not shining in Adelaide because they too sweltered under the hot sun yesterday. And a sunny day in Perth. For Brisbane today, a mostly sunny day with a top temperature of 31 degrees. Similar conditions tomorrow in Brisbane, around about 31, cloud clearing on Saturday and partly cloudy on Sunday. So the weather gods have been kind to Brisbane this week. But as I say, a total fire ban is in place for Greater Sydney and the Illawarra, Shoalhaven areas. A hot day for Sydney is the official forecast. It'll be a sunny morning, then cloud will increase. The slight chance of a storm in the afternoon or evening. A top temperature, this is in the city, 35 degrees on the coast and up to 42 in the west. And they're predicting beyond 42 in areas like Richmond and Penrith, which of course our host through the day will keep you up to date with. For tomorrow, cloudy and 26 degrees, a big drop and a welcome drop. Partly cloudy and 32 on Saturday, so warming up again for the first part of the weekend. And then it gets cooler on Sunday, 26 and cloudy conditions. So today and Saturday, the hottest of the next 4 days. There you have it. That's your forecast. We'll talk about that further in the program today. As I say, it is Thursday, December 14. And on to the news of the morning. There's talk of a push to restore community confidence in the New South Wales justice system, with the state's leading prosecutor calling on lawyers to stop doing so-called soft-on-crime deals. At last. Now, the Telegraph reports Mark Tedeschi, QC, who, as you may know, has prosecuted some of the country's most notorious criminals, has written to all Crown prosecutors telling them to get tough. You see, that's what prosecutors are supposed to say, get tough. We rarely see it in the public domain or hear it. He warns them against agreeing to facts that are contrary to the evidence and inappropriately agreeing to sentences without jail time. In a note written just over a week ago, he says, there have been recent examples of inappropriate concessions where the evidence did not warrant a concession being made. He says prosecutors need to remain robust and challenge as far as possible any claims made by defence lawyers. Now, apparently he has been supported by Lloyd Babb, the DPP, the director. That's got to be a good thing. They are both on the same page and they're telling their colleagues to get tough. That's exactly what the community wants. And still on lawyers, and I can imagine we've got separated and divorced parents out there listening right now who could relate to this closely. But a family court judge has attacked what he's described as the obscenely high legal costs charged by family lawyers and an apparent win at all costs, concede little or nothing, chase every rabbit down every hole approach. Judge Robert Benjamin has referred 2 lawyers to the Legal Services Watchdog. He's serious. And it's over their outrageous and eye-watering fees, his words, which total, get this, $860,000 for a couple. In a judgment released yesterday, Justice Benjamin said he'd become increasingly concerned about the high levels of costs charged by the legal profession in property and parenting proceedings, and had expressed concern in previous judgments which had gone unheeded. He said, in the Sydney Registry of the Family Court, I have observed what seems to be a culture of bitter, adversarial and highly aggressive family law litigation. He said, the consequences of obscenely high legal costs are destructive of the emotional, social and financial well-being of the parties and their children. Their children. He says it must stop. The mother's legal bills in the case in question, by the way, totalled about $353,000, while the father's legal costs totalled around $506,000. Incredible. And well done to Justice Benjamin. Now, 3 men will face the Sydney court today after being arrested in a very dramatic police raid at Centennial Park yesterday. The men, aged 27, 34 and 39, were arrested just after midday by officers from the Tactical Operations Unit. Now, police used what have been described as non-lethal projectiles during the operation, and several bullet-like holes were seen in a vehicle found at the scene. You may have seen the pictures on the news. The men have been charged with firearms and money laundering offences after police seized 2 handguns and almost $650,000 in cash. What is it like to arrest people, open the back door and see $650,000 in cash? Now, finally on legal matters, and the husband of Victorian woman Karen Rzewski has been remanded in custody until April 18 after being charged with his wife's murder. Boris Rzewski was arrested yesterday morning after his wife disappeared from their Melbourne home on June 29 last year. Her remains were found near a walking trail in the city's northwest on February 20. Rzewski's lawyer says his client will be pleading not guilty. It was a very brief appearance and not much else was spoken. A new opinion poll has found the Liberal Party on track to win Saturday's Bennelong by-election in Sydney. The Reachtel Fairfax poll has found former member John Alexander with a primary vote of 40.4%, down from 41.6% last month, while Labor candidate Christina Keneally is up from 34.5% to 35.7%. Now, I don't know whether that tells you who the campaigner of the month is, but it seems to me that Christina's gaining ground and John Alexander is not. On the two-party preferred vote, it's 53-47 to the coalition. That would be a relief to John Alexander. The poll has found the percentage of undecided voters in the electorate has fallen to just 2.4%. So they've basically made up their minds in Bennelong. Now, the poll also asked people about the federal government's recently announced crackdown on foreign interference in Australia. Now, Bennelong has a large percentage of the Chinese population. So this is interesting. 46.2% of those surveyed said they strongly supported that. That's a big percentage, 46. While 20.2% said they supported it, and 22.7% were undecided. On the other side of the ledger, just 10.9% said they opposed or strongly opposed the crackdown, which is interesting. Just on that, and we're told Australia's ambassador to China has been called into the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a dressing down. This is the way the Chinese operate, you see. They can look after their sovereignty, they can look after their borders and prevent intervention and interference in their country, but don't dare Australia do it, or we'll grab your ambassador and tell him what for. The Australian reports that in a sign of the increasing tensions between the two governments, Jan Adams was officially summoned by Chinese officials on Friday. Chinese ambassador to Australia, Cheng Jingye, has also made formal representations to the acting secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs. So they're going all out. China's Global Times newspaper has accused Australia of McCarthyism and warned Chinese people with close ties to Westerners would be treated like informants to Western spy agencies and be accused of treason just like Australian politician Sam Dastyari. So they're going into bat for Sam Dastyari. Imagine if they had a politician that did to them what Sam did to us. It'd be a different story. And just on the good senator, He's still a senator. We're told he's likely to keep drawing his taxpayer-funded salary well into the new year. It's reported his replacement, widely touted to be Kristina Keneally, if she doesn't win the Bennelong by-election on Saturday, will have to be selected by New South Wales Labor firstly at the start of February and then confirmed by the New South Wales Parliament. So there's a process to go through, but that doesn't write off Kristina Keneally's capability of taking that Senate seat. She's still in the race if she is to lose Bennelong on Saturday. We're told today that the embattled National Broadband Network will cut its wholesale prices to encourage internet users to upgrade to faster connections in what some have described as a desperate bid to restore confidence in the troubled project. Well, it's certainly a bid, and quite desperate when you think that this just cuts down on their bottom line, cutting wholesale prices. The NBN Co says it will offer telecommunications companies new top-speed NBN packages at discounts of up to 27%, almost a third. We're told this marks an attempt to unclog the bottlenecks caused by Telstra, Optus, TPG and others who aren't buying enough bandwidth to prevent internet speeds from plunging at peak times. And you know the story here. People get promised X milliseconds download speed. What happens? You get to that peak time at 7:30 at night and you get half of that, maybe even less, maybe even nothing. We're told the hope is the discount offers, which the NBN Co denies will hurt its bottom line. Oh, come on. Pull the other one. It plays jingle bells. Will be passed on to customers who will in turn pay for faster NBN packages. We will see. And still in the corporate world, and the Commonwealth Bank today will be hit with a further 100 allegations of serious failures to report suspicious transactions. There's more of it. Lawyers for AUSTRAC, Australia's financial intelligence agency, have been putting the final touches to an amended statement of claim against the nation's largest bank. 100 more allegations. That'll be filed in the federal court today. The Commonwealth has filed its defence to more than 53,000 claims of breaching anti-money laundering legislation, saying it will fight the charges. They should just put their hands up, admit defeat, because AUSTRAC has them on toast, and we'll follow that case for you. We'll take a break right now and talk sport, of which there is plenty, because we've got the third test kicking off in Perth this afternoon, which we'll keep across on the Macquarie Media Network. It's 7:30 to 6 o'clock, 7:30 to 5 in Queensland. Just 3 minutes from news.
And now a sports update for Swan Security. New wire-free, worry-free camera range.
James Willis is with me. What did the bloke say? Jeff Horn. Why do they all do that?
Michael Buffer it was as well, the greatest of all time. We had him in the studio. Alan Jones interviewed him earlier this year.
He's always done it, hasn't he?
He did the Jeff Horn fight. The bloke calling the fight was the Colonel Bob Sheridan, who's called some of the greatest fights in boxing history, including Ali's biggest fights, Rumble in the Jungle against George Foreman, and the Thriller in the Manila against Fraser. And he was the caller again last night, one of the all-time greats. But Jeff Horn has retained his WBO welterweight title. It was bruising exchanges in the opening rounds. In the 7th, Corcoran threw a punch after the bell had rung for the end of the round, but Jeff Horn got the job done with an 11th round technical knockout. His opponent, Gary Corcoran's corner, called the fight off because he couldn't see. He had deep cuts on both eyes, so his corner threw in the towel there, and at that stage the judges had Horn a mile in front on all three scorecards.
Okay, let's hear what Jeff Horn had to say afterwards.
I knew he was coming here. I knew he had prepared. They'd come 3 weeks early. They were talking a smart game, and that's being confident before the fight, and that's what you have to do to come to try and win. And he definitely pushed me in there. I felt my time was a bit off, but managed to get him out of there in the end. Yeah, I was just getting my timing there. The whole fight I felt like it was a little bit off tonight, but I managed to clip him with a few good ones, and unfortunately our heads did come together, as we've both got cuts on our heads again, so that's a bit of a shame, but yeah, most of it was caused by punches, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, so 2 out of the way, and now he blasts off into a whole new stratosphere, doesn't he?
The next fight is against American Terence Crawford, who's undefeated, the biggest name in the welterweight division, and that will take place in Las Vegas during April. There's also talk next year about the winner of that fight between Crawford and Horn taking on Manny Pacquiao, so it could be a rematch, Horn and Pacquiao, and the possibility of a fight against Anthony Mundine for Horn, which doesn't excite me all that much, although Horn could belt the tripe out of him, and there'll be some interest, but I guess out of the three, it's not all that exciting.
You've just made it interesting for me. Now, third Ashes test gets underway this afternoon.
Yeah, England have got plenty of motivation here. Their opening batsman, Alistair Cook, plays his 150th test match. He's yet to score runs in this series, so this could be the game that he fires. And fast bowlers James Anderson and Stuart Broad play their 100th test match together. Now, England hasn't won at the Wacker since 1978, and no Englishman has scored a century so far in this series. So let's see how they respond. Suggestion is that Peter Handscomb will be dropped for Australia in place of the all-rounder Mitchell Marsh.
And just quickly, Dennis Lilly will not be there at the Wacker, right?
No, and that's a protest. He believes that test matches should stay at the Wacker, but as we've said, from next year, the $1 billion new Perth Stadium will host all the big cricket games.
All right, mate, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Chris.
James Willis.
Chris Smith filling in for Alan Jones. Thanks to Vodafone. Want a no lock-in contract? See vodafone.com.au/plans. T's and C's apply.
For our New South Wales listeners and for our HSC families, there's drama galore going on in households right this second because the texts have just come through. How did you go? See, they text the results nowadays. Amazing technology for those who don't use it as often as someone like I would, but text came through at 6 o'clock, which will give everyone a rundown of what they scored in the HSC. There will be tears of joy, tears of sadness right now. There'll be hugs. There'll be disappointment. There'll be glee. And if you want to share some of that with us, 131873 is the telephone number. Our promotions department has handed me the Sony Christmas CD pack sheet, so I can happily tell you that 3 of our lucky listeners, open line callers in this half hour, will receive that great Sony Christmas CD pack. This is from Barbra Streisand, the Magic Concert Tour, Christmas with Elvis and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, John Farnham and Olivia Newton-John, Friends for Christmas, the deluxe edition, which means there are 3 new tracks on that one, compared to the one that was on sale last year. So that's our pack, and 3 callers between now and 6:30, 5:30 Queensland time will receive that pack. So if you want to share your joy or even your disappointment, can I just say to those who are disappointed, don't be. It doesn't all start and end on your mark in the high school certificate. It doesn't. And there are millions of examples of very successful people who have gone on to bigger and better things without a mark, without even using the mark they got in the high school certificate. So forget all of that. Just concentrate on putting your left foot in front of your right and your right foot in front of your left and start getting out there and doing what you want to do. 131873. Well, what do you say? Here we were saying goodbye Sam Dastyari and seeing the hypocrisy expressed by Bill Shorten, considering how much contact he has had with Huang Xiangmo. And today we learn the hypocrisy has no bounds at all. This tops it all. The first Labor MP to suggest that Sam should resign, Linda Burney, herself met with the same billionaire developer only weeks before being elected to federal parliament last year. Now, there have been Liberals who met with that developer. Meeting with him is not the crime, it's the timing. You see, the meeting came months after reports began to emerge that Sam had legal expenses paid for by Huang and his company Yoo-Hoo. What a hide she had of recommending that Shanghai Sam resign. Well, from this point on, we're calling Linda Beijing Bernie. It's Shanghai Sam and Beijing Bernie. Linda Burney met Huang Xiangmo at the North Sydney office of his firm, so she was summoned to him, not the other way around. If I had to meet with Linda Burney, she wouldn't be coming here. I'd be going there. But no, she went to Yoo-Hoo in June last year. And the timing of this stinks. What hypocrisy. And she has the hide to stand in front of a camera and say, oh, he should go. He should go. He had clouds hovering around him, Huang Xiangmo, and Linda Burney, Beijing Bernie, meets up with the Chinese billionaire donut. They can't help themselves, can they? They cannot help themselves. You may have a view on all of that. Maybe it's Linda Burney who should be exiting through the same door that Sam Dastyari is almost walking through. 131873. Now, Here's a story many separated or divorced Australians will relate to, and I mentioned this about 30 minutes ago, but a family court judge has delivered a blistering judgment on the culture of bitter, adversarial and highly aggressive family law litigation. And he's blasted 2 law firms for charging outrageous fees. This is Justice Robert Benjamin, who deserves an award for saying what he said. He's got the guts. He said regularly heard cases filed in the Sydney Registry of the Family Court, and this would apply right around the country, because it's in the interests of these private law firms to keep the till ringing, you see. He is increasingly concerned about the high levels of costs charged by the legal profession in property and parenting proceedings. And he makes the link that if you start ripping the money and the assets out of a family, you then make the children suffer even more. And this is what it's all about. And this is what these lawyers do. And he cites this couple that spent $860,000 in their family court law proceedings. Unbelievable. He says he's over this approach, this win-at-all-cost approach, concede little or nothing, chase every rabbit down every hole, and hang the consequences approach to family law litigation. And I bet many of you are as well. How accurate is that? How accurate is that? Have you been close to solving the dramas that have gone on, maybe an order for custody or maybe asset distribution, and all of a sudden it's on again for young and old? Have you seen that happen to the way you have been dealt with in the family court? How much does it cost you? 131873. And great news from the Department of Prosecutions in New South Wales. How often do we hear about deals that are done outside the courtrooms between prosecutors and defence lawyers where the crooks get these weak sentences or walk entirely from the case? So they've almost had enough of this, because the state's leading prosecutor has urged lawyers to stop doing soft-on-crime court deals. Mark Tedeschi QC, who should also cop an award, has emailed all Crown prosecutors telling them to get tough. And he's been supported by his boss, Director of Public Prosecutions, Lloyd Babb SC. You see, now they're speaking like as if they're paid by the public, which they are. And the public wants the prosecutions department, at the very least, they want judges to get tough too, but they want the prosecutions department to get tough. Because if prosecutions doesn't get tough, what do you think the magistrates and judges are going to do? It is about time they've said that in the public domain, and this has just happened. You know, it is not the prosecutor's job to find ways of not sending someone to jail so that they can create space in jail for the government. That's not their job. And it's not their job to care for the welfare of criminals. Others can do that. There are plenty of bleeding hearts that can do that. That's not the job of the prosecutors. So do you think the prosecutors in the New South Wales Division of the Courts will heed the warning from Mark Tedeschi? 131873. You may have a view on all of that. And Frank Lowy, one quick one. He's made me think very deeply today as I was driving in very early. And I heard about Frank Lowy making a comment as he flew into Tel Aviv yesterday. And as you know, he's announced the $33 billion sale of Westfields, the business empire. And he's made this point. At 87 years of age, he said, "I'm not the retiring type. I'm not the retiring type." At 87. And it's made me think about how many of you have consciously made the decision never to officially retire. Now, that may not mean that you're working 6 days a week like you did for most of your life, but it may mean keeping your fingers in a few pies, keeping the mind, I guess, exercised and busy. Now, Frank Lowy's involved in Australian soccer, big time. And so he's got plenty of things to do, and he likes to have things to do and accomplish. Well, maybe you're in the same boat. 131873. Have you decided, no, I'll semi-retire, but I won't entirely retire, and that's the way it's going to be. Some of us just have to keep working until we drop because we've got too many kids and debts and all that sort of stuff. But others may willingly decide to keep working. Is that you? 131873 is the telephone number. Suzanne, go right ahead.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead, Suzanne.
Oh, look, I don't like the comment that you made that all lawyers seem to be out for the money, because I'm a solicitor.
Yep.
might not, should not be saying it, maybe, I don't know. But
No, I said private law firms. It makes sense that private law firms will keep the till ringing because they're private businesses.
No, it's usually fueled by the people. I've worked on legal aid cases and the argument's been over a ride-on lawnmower. So I don't know that the solicitor, well, I don't know about all law firms, but I can say that all lawyers aren't tarred with the same brush that you were saying.
Oh, okay, well, that's good news, but too many are. Would you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. Again, I would say a lot of it's fueled by the people in the matter.
So the warring parties are the ones who keep it going. I would have thought lawyers have it in their power to convince their clients that if you go down that track, it's going to cost you a lot and you're not going to get anywhere.
And that's what I'm saying to you. Yes, you explain that to them, but as I explained to you, I've had simple matters, family law matters, and they've been financed by legal aid. And the argument was, well, he came and took the ride-on mower, and I want half of that ride-on mower. And you're saying, look, that's not property. They're just, things that you've acquired through the relationship.
And they won't listen to you?
No, they won't listen to you. So as much as it is the lawyers in some firms, and I wouldn't say all firms.
Well, there are two firms in particular who are in strife here.
Oh, well, if they are, they deserve it if that's the way they manage it. But
have you ever heard a cost for a family law process of $860,000 ever?
Well, it depends on how much money these people obviously had to throw away. I mean, yes, the children are the losers there, aren't they? Everyone's the loser there.
Oh. Well, the judge describes the family involved as an ordinary Australian family. I don't know whether that means they've got plenty of assets, but that's got to leave the kids.
I'm an ordinary Australian family, and if I was to do any of that sort of stuff between myself and my husband, there's no way I can afford $800,000 for a, no, I wouldn't say that they're an ordinary family. They're ordinary maybe in the fact that they've got kids, they've got a house, they go to work, they've got good jobs, but they're not ordinary as in the ordinary person.
Yeah. It's a nightmare process, though, isn't it, Suzanne?
Yeah, of course it is a nightmare process. It's a very emotional part of law, and you'd be surprised how people just lose focus on why and what's going on, and they just want to get the other person, and that's just what they're doing.
It's a process sometimes of revenge and revenge only, eh?
That's exactly right.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you for sticking up for your profession. There are two law firms in the case that this judge has mentioned who are going to be in a little bit of car, I would have thought. 21 minutes after 6, 21 after 5 in Queensland. Chris Smith for Alan Jones. Lachlan from Chester Hill in Sydney Southwest has just received his text message for his results, HSC. He says, quite frankly, they were much better than I ever could have hoped for. If any of your young listeners are nervously avoiding looking at the text, all I can advise is just give a quick peek because they'll be leagues better than what you've been dreading for the past few months. That's cheers. 3 cheers for the class of 17, says Lachlan. Good luck to you. I like your attitude. 131873, I should refer you to an article written today by Rowan Dean, editor of The Spectator, and contributor to my afternoon program on 2GB and 4BC and 2CC. He cites the two callers that we have received on the open line this week. Annette, who wets a towel and covers herself in a wet towel to keep herself cool because she won't turn on the cooling system. And Pauline, who said that she uses a torch to get her through the evening because she doesn't want to turn on the lights, all because of power. And Rowan writes brilliantly about both callers to this program this week. 131873. Chris, go right ahead.
Oh, hi, Chris.
Hi.
I've been a legal secretary for 47 years, and I've now retired, but I've worked mainly in family law. The previous caller, I totally agree with her. Clients are often advised that it's going to cost them if they go to court, and there's plenty of mediation services out there, but it's a revenge thing or somebody wants to win.
Not only are there mediation, but you can actually negotiate between the two sides.
Exactly.
And short-circuit the costs and the fear and the drama.
And also, Chris, when you are a client, you sign a cost agreement and set out fully what the costs are. You're always advised to stay out of court because it's going to cost you thousands. But nobody will listen. They just insist on winning.
I've got a CD pack for you, Chris, a Sony Christmas CD pack. Merry Christmas to you.
Same to you, Chris.
And
thank you.
Stay on the line. Thank you very much for your insight. Jules, hi.
G'day, Chris. How you going?
Good, thank you.
Mate, I'm calling to refute the last two callers, actually.
Yeah, okay.
It's been my experience, because I've gone through the whole mediation, legally assisted mediation and private family law. I'm still going through it now.
Yeah.
Mediation was all about, getting it resolved. If you can stay out of court, it's a win, and I was all for that. Had to go to court, and as soon as I was lawyered up with a private lawyer, they were all about getting it into court and keeping it in court, and I had to lock horns with them about resolving an issue. I said, well, look, the ex and I have come to an agreement. We want to put such and such in place, and they've gone, you know what, it's really better if you go to court.
See, this is an example. As I say, I'm sure this doesn't pertain to everyone in the industry, but that judge hasn't said what he said for nothing, and he's got two firms in his sights. And I would have thought this is the experience of many Australians.
What you said and what the judge said is lined up beat for beat exactly with what my experience is. And
Okay.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
No. You've got a Sony Christmas CD pack, Jules. Stay on the line. Well done. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, and Ted, very quickly, Ted.
Yeah, what's up with mandatory sentencing?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. It can't come from the prosecutor, though, but, it could come from the Attorney General, minimum mandatory sentencing. You're right.
That'd stop a lot, and there'd be no wheeling and dealing at the end there, would there?
Yeah, you're right. No deals outside of court. And this is what the Chief Prosecutor is saying. No deals which involves walking away from court. We should be putting them in jail. That's our job. They are the prosecutors. Ted, you've got a Sony Christmas CD pack. Well done.
Oh, thanks. Have a nice day.
I will do, and you have a beautiful Christmas too, mate. Thank you very much for that. We'll open the lines again just after 8:30, just after 7:30 in Brisbane. Chris Smith for Alan Jones.
Chris Smith filling in for Alan Jones. Thanks to Vodafone. Want a no lock-in contract? See vodafone.com.au/plans. T's and C's apply.
We'll be pursuing a few things we've raised on the program throughout the week already, including the story we brought you yesterday about school cleaners in New South Wales. Something is highly abnormal about the way the state government is treating the contract of school cleaners at the moment, so we'll try and get to the bottom of that with the minister involved. Letters to the editor, firstly, at 20 to 7, 20 to 6 in Queensland. Bruce Collison from Banks and the ACT writes today, why is it that today, when governments have so many public servants to do their bidding, they pay advisors and consultants to deliver the best advice and yet still end up with the fiasco of the New South Wales government's so-called return and earn scheme? Classic one, Bruce. This is right. I brought you the story 2 days ago about the number of, the amount of money being churned out by federal and state governments on consultants. And they come up with the return and earn scheme, which is a dog. Anyway, Bruce says, with all of those resources available, how come the group charged with delivering a winning racehorse has actually delivered a 3-legged camel, despite the successful example of the South Australian scheme? Could it be that those involved developed their scheme in a think tank devoid of any practical or real-life commercial experience? Now you've got it, Bruce. Experience that would see the obvious flaws in the proposed model. I wonder whether any on the panel that devised the return and earn scheme in New South Wales had any commercial experience. I bet they didn't. As business and the community pay the hefty premium, there's no doubt that those involved in this disaster will be safe in their jobs and will be working on the next harebrained scheme. You are dead right, Bruce Collison. Now, Joanna Hackett from Macleay Island in Queensland wrote, apparently the latest NAPLAN results are a wake-up call. New South Wales Education Minister Simon Birmingham, well, he is the Federal Education Minister, Joanna, says it's such a shame when education has received so much extra money. Throwing money at a broken system doesn't fix it. But nobody up at the pointy end of education seems smart enough to realise that. Well, Education Minister after Education Minister have said the same thing, Joanna. Let's just double our education budget. That'll get us back into power. That'll make everyone happy who've got kids at school. Doesn't work like that. It's the quality, not the quantity of the system you put in place. And Annie Wilson from Inverloch in Victoria. Donald Trump's restoration of the space program is a great idea. We might discover which planet he comes from then. It's been a long time, Donald Trump joke. And New South Wales police are urging the public to never leave pets in cars on hot days, including today, after a dog died while locked in a vehicle in Rose Bay in Sydney's East yesterday. Police have been told a dog walker left a 4-year-old dog believed to be a Kishon, inside a car on Old South Head Road about 11 o'clock in the morning. The dog's owner, a 46-year-old woman, became concerned when her dog had not been returned home. At about 5:30 yesterday afternoon, the owner located the car and found her dog had died. The RSPCA has been notified. Today, it'll be a stinking hot day. Tops over 40 in the western suburbs. Do not leave your pets in your vehicle. Well, what a mess this Parklea prison is. A mess. A prisoner has been stabbed at Parklea. On the same day, New South Wales Corrections announced it had confiscated a prison map smuggled out by another inmate. A 23-year-old inmate was allegedly assaulted by two other inmates at Parklea yesterday morning. The injuries, stab wounds, are not life-threatening. Lucky. The incident is being investigated. No staff were injured. The alleged attack comes as the department announced it had seized documents of a demountable building which had been smuggled out by an inmate who'd been housed at Parklea. How does that happen? The department said the architectural drawings were of a temporary building and had no detail in them that created a risk to security. Still, it's not a good look. If you can take those sort of details outside of a prison, what else can you get out? And we've had a string of security breaches at that prison. Smuggled phones, drugs, drones, weapons, tobacco. And it looks like the powers that be in the correction system of New South Wales are dead set asleep at the wheel. Now, a Sydney man claims he has no memory of fatally stabbing his niece and dumping her body in a blowhole 100 kilometres away. You've got to read between the lines here. There is an attempt going on in this court case to try and argue that the culprit was somehow mentally deficient. 29-year-old Derek Barrett previously pleaded guilty to murdering Chinese university student Meng Mei Leng, whose naked body was found floating face down inside the blowhole at Snapper Point on the New South Wales Central Coast in April 2016. The former IT worker also pleaded guilty to another 21 offences, including 19 counts of filming Miss Lang for sexual gratification when she was bound and gagged before her death. As sick as it gets. 25-year-old Miss Lang had lived with Barrett, her aunt and her cousin in the southwest Sydney suburb of Campsie since arriving in Australia to study, 5 years before her murder. The New South Wales Supreme Court yesterday heard Barrett say he was drug-affected when he killed Miss Lang and can only remember having an argument with her, then seeing blood in the sink. He said, "You have no idea how it frustrates me every day trying to think of how this came about and why I went down this path." He's due to be sentenced tomorrow. And I see a raid by Queensland's corruption watchdog hasn't halted Logan Mayor Luke Smith. No way. Mr Smith's offices were raided on December 4, you see, over alleged links between political donations and council planning work. Well, he's currently overseas. He's enjoying a 10-day tour of the United States and Canada, but hang on, it gets worse. The trip is part of a $38,000 ratepayer-funded global connection strategy approved by his council. Good work if you can get it. Only a week after his own council office was raided by the Crime and Corruption Commission, he's taken off on ratepayers' money. A recent investigation by the ABC found Mr Smith had lobbied other councillors to support a massive development in Logan City. The developer was a major donor and had allegedly handed cash to Mr Smith on at least one occasion. It is 12 and a half minutes to 7, 12 and a half to 6 in Sydney. A new poll suggests incumbent John Alexander will hang on to the seat of Bennelong for the coalition on Saturday. A Fairfax Media Reach Tell poll published in today's Herald puts Mr Alexander at 53% to Labor's Christina Keneally at 47% on a two-party preferred basis. Half of surveyed voters said news of disgraced Labor Senator Sam Dastyari and his Chinese connections would affect their vote in the Saturday by-election, as it should. As it should. A third of those voters said it would make them less likely to vote Labor. Now, separately, a news poll published earlier in the week suggested that the Liberal Party's vote had collapsed and they were neck and neck on a two-party preferred basis. Hard to work out. And look, this is a small survey area. It's Bennelong. It's not the nation. So it's interesting how you have so much discrepancy between various surveys. But, John Alexander, grassroots local member, they both live outside of the electorate, which never goes down too well. But I think John Alexander probably deserves to win. Either way, I think we'll see Christina Keneally in the federal parliament, maybe in Sam Dastyari's position as a senator before maybe March of next year. That's the way it looks at this stage. And a landmark discrimination trial continues in Queensland to determine if women should be allowed to play golf 7 days a week. Can you believe we're talking about this in 2017? Barbara Barnett, one of 9 female members of the Royal Queensland Golf Club, is disputing their men-only competition day, which is held every Wednesday, because it prevents Barbara and the other full female members from playing golf until 3:15 on Wednesdays, despite Barbara paying the full membership amount. Now, Mrs. Barnett has been told by club officials that a lot of the men would die before allowing women to play on Wednesdays. You won't have our Wednesdays. The Royal Queensland Golf Club at Eagle Farm, it's one of the best courses in Australia for those who know it, with a members register that includes top medical surgeons and Queen's counsels. Big deal. The club was granted its royal charter in 1921 by King George V, with the official letter signed by Winston Churchill. I bet they all dine out on that, eh? Full membership costs $10,000 plus an annual fee of $4,000. Barbara's paid this. She should be allowed to play any day. Mrs. Barnett plays off a handicap of 12 and says the 3:15pm Wednesday tee-off makes it impossible to play in winter. Of course it does, but she can play the other 6 days of the week. The hearing continues, but we're told this is a landmark discrimination trial. We'll take a break. It's 10 to 7, 10 to 6 in Queensland. Chris Smith for Alan Jones. Here I was just talking about Parklea Prison and the incredible problems it's been facing. Stabbing yesterday, building plans taken outside of the prison by an inmate, and all the other contraband dramas that have gone on. And what do you know? David Elliott, the prisons minister, releases a press statement. Nothing to do with what we've just spoken about, the serious issues. No, it's about the Wellington prison in the state's west and how high-tech the prison is. They are masters of deception, aren't they?
And now on the Alan Jones Breakfast Show, the Stock Market Report.
Five minutes to news time. Welcome to Thursday, December 14, 2017. The Dow Jones is trading at 137 points higher. The Nasdaq is trading 26 points higher. The Standard & Poor's is trading 6 points higher. The Nikkei has closed 108.1 points lower. The Shanghai Composite has closed 34 points higher. The FTSE has closed 3.9 points lower. Oil is $74.56 Australian a barrel, and that is $56. That's $56.80. 1 Australian dollar is worth 76.12 US cents, and gold is trading at $1,249 90 cents an ounce.
On the Alan Jones Breakfast Show, national weather.
All right, a shower or two and a possible storm in Darwin. In Hobart, a shower or two. The chance of a shower in Melbourne after their hot day yesterday. Partly cloudy in Canberra and Adelaide, and a sunny day in Perth. Mostly sunny day for Brisbane, top of 31. A total fire ban in place for Greater Sydney and the Illawarra Shoalhaven. So the official forecast for Sydney, a hot day, sunny morning, cloud increasing, slight chance of a storm in the afternoon or evening. Top of 35 on the coast, 42 in the west. And London, cloudy, 5 degrees.
The UK Report, thanks to Peters of Kensington. Open 7 days at Barangaroo, Birkenhead Point in Kensington. Or shop online at petersofkensington.com.au.
Morning, Adam Gilchrist.
Hey, good morning, Chris.
I love the start of this story. Could have been a disaster, but a miracle baby.
Yeah, certainly. A Christmas miracle is what Naomi Findlay is calling her baby, born with the rare condition Ectopia cordis, basically baby Vanellope, which is an odd name, a rare name perhaps, but baby Vanellope was born with her heart outside her body and no chest bones. So now, after 3 painstaking operations at Glenfield Hospital in Leicester, the heart essentially has been put under the skin, and the plan is to 3D print a chest bone to provide protection. Obviously, technically it won't be a bone, but still, you get the idea. Yeah. There were 50 medics helping with these 3 operations. Vanellope was given barely a 10% chance of survival at one stage. In fact, her parents had been advised to have an abortion at one stage. But Vanellope, by the way, was named after a character in the Disney film Wreck-It Ralph, who was a real fighter who turns into a princess. So
perfect.
Could well be a happy ending for this all.
Yeah. So. Britain's most successful road cyclist, hero or villain, Adam?
Well, that's it, yeah. Chris Froome, the cyclist Chris Froome, certainly, I'd say, arguably Britain's most successful athlete still in action. He faces questions over a drugs test. Froome suffers from asthma, and he takes salbutamol, as plenty of asthma sufferers do. But you're only allowed so much, and in a test at the Tour of Spain, the Volta a España, he had twice the allowed limit in his urine. He acknowledges that he took more salbutamol than usual because his asthma was worse. But he says he absolutely took the permitted dose, and he says it's right there's an investigation because he did all the right things. But at this stage, Chris Froome, I mean, he's won the Tour de France 4 times. He's already amongst the legends of the sport, but ultimately, is he going to be an Eddie Merckx or a Lance Armstrong? We don't yet know.
Okay, and the monster Fatberg?
Yeah, this will put you off your breakfast. Okay, step back. The Museum of London is going to show the most disgusting exhibit that anyone here can remember. It is a slice taken out of the monster Fatberg, which clogged up the sewers under Whitechapel.
Oh!
So this is beneath the streets where Jack the Ripper once wreaked havoc. There was this congealed mass of fat, oil, grease, wet wipes and sanitary products, all rolled into a 250-metre-long snake of foulness. As the museum curator says, it is repulsively human, and, as he puts it, surely one of the most disgusting but fascinating objects ever to go on display. I don't know, never mind how it looks, you kind of wonder how it smells. I think I might step back if I go anywhere near the Museum of London next year, and that'll help the cornflakes go down as well, won't it, that story?
I've just cancelled my toast. Thank you very much for that. We'll talk tomorrow. Thank you, Adam.
Cheers.
And now, a sports update.
Can't wait for the third test to begin. It could be wrapped up in 4 days, and the whole series could be wrapped up.
First ball at 1:30pm Sydney time, or 12:30pm for our 4BC listeners. The Australians lead 2-0. If we win this test, the Ashes is ours. We expect Peter Handscomb to be dropped for Mitchell Marsh. Although one person that won't be there is one of our all-time greats, Dennis Lilly, because he's a huge fan of the Wacker, and from next year, the new $1 billion stadium will host all the massive cricket games.
Yeah, that's a bit sad, really. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. 8.5 minutes after 7 o'clock, those HSC students in New South Wales who received their text today, I hope the day has begun brightly for you. And for those who didn't get what they wanted, it is not the end of the world. Take it from me. Now, weather-wise, we're all centring on Sydney today because there's a total fire ban in place for Greater Sydney in the Illawarra, Shoalhaven, a hot day, maybe the chance of a storm, top of 35 along the coast and 42 in the west. So please do as much as you possibly can to keep cool. And for Brisbane today, mostly sunny, 31 degrees. We'll ask anyone who's been involved in a family court issue, and they'll tell you it's a living hell. The entire process can take years and can cost all parties tens of thousands of dollars. Well, the family court judge has delivered a blistering judgment on the culture of bitter, adversarial and highly aggressive family law litigation. Justice Robert Benjamin, I reckon, is the hope of the side. In a judgment published yesterday, he said he was increasingly concerned about the high levels of costs charged by the legal profession in property and parenting proceedings. He asked the Legal Services Commissioner to investigate whether the fees charged by solicitors could constitute professional misconduct. He's quite serious. Now, the Telegraph reports today, Justice Benjamin said a couple, given the pseudonyms Mr. Simic and Miss Norton, had spent an eye-watering $860,000 in legal fees. He said these amounts are, on the face, outrageous levels of costs for ordinary people involved in family law proceedings. Now, the Hobart-based judge took aim at the win at all costs, concede little or nothing, chase every rabbit down every hole, and hang the consequences approach to family law litigation. Well described. He says the culture was bitter, adversarial, and highly aggressive. We'll ask anyone who's been unlucky enough to be in the family court, and they'll tell you the same thing. Justice Benjamin said lawyers had a duty to minimise costs and to reduce conflict, and some of the communications appear to add fuel to the fire of conflict rather than dampen it down. It's really in the interest, of course, of these law firms to keep the till ringing. And here's the most critical aspect of what he had to say. The children of these parties depend upon the income and assets of their parents to support them. He said, yet the cost of the proceedings have taken a terrible toll on the wealth of the parties and consequently their ability to support and provide for their children. It's the children who are suffering. They're going through enough, given the fact their parents are at one another's throats in the courts and, of course, separated. The lawyers are simply cashing in and doing so when people are at their most vulnerable and more emotional than ever. Enough's enough. Well done to Justice Robert Benjamin for having the guts to tell it like it is. The lawyers are doing a gun and mask job. Good morning to you. 16 minutes after 7, 16 after 6 in Queensland. I took an open line call this week from listener Steph, a cleaner contracted to the New South Wales state government. Now, 7,000 school cleaners across the state will apparently need to reapply for their jobs for the first time in 24 years. The New South Wales Department of Finance Services and Innovation has notified United Voice, which is the union representing the cleaners, that employment guarantees in place since 1994 will not be extended in the new contracts from 2018. What does that mean? Now, most work 2 shifts a day from 4:30am up until 9 and then later 2pm till 6pm. They take home less than $19 an hour, mind you. And I spoke with United Voice State Secretary Mel Gatfield yesterday. She told us for the first time in 24 years, every cleaner will have to reapply for their job, with many facing an anxious wait to see if they'll have a job come July next year. Would you clean public school toilets? No. The people who do are being treated like rubbish. Why? Well, we heard from the Minister Victor Dominello's office yesterday. He said current contracts don't reflect modern practice. What does that mean? He's on the line. Minister, good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
What does that mean?
Well, modern industrial practice means that they look at square meterage rather than the hourly rate. Now, that's a practice that's...
Square meterage?
Yeah, it's a practice that applies in Queensland and other jurisdictions, and it's just modern industrial practice. The practice of per hourly rate was something that was applied in the last century. But, Chris, can I...
But my square meterage is 1 metre by 1 metre. A cleaner who works here in this radio station has a hell of a lot of square meterage, only because of the nature of the job.
And exactly, and different schools and different environments have different rates and different requirements, and that's why...
But it's a dumb comparison, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's the current industrial practice. But, Chris, no decision...
That doesn't make it right.
Chris, no decision has been made. So I got involved in this, and I've met with Mel, and Mel Gatfield's a good person. She's doing the best thing by her union. And we're a government not representing the unions. That's what Labor governments do. But we're here to make sure that we get good outcomes for the workers, for the taxpayer, and for the school.
But it looks to me as if the government is, again, picking on the easy targets, though, Minister.
But, Chris, I just...
$19 an hour?
Chris, you haven't heard what I said.
I have listened to every word you've said.
Well, I've said no decision has yet been made.
And I'm trying to do my best to make sure that a stupid decision isn't made.
Well, a stupid decision won't be made, because what we're going to do is wait for all the information to come onto the table, and we'll get that information on the 15th of December. And then we will have information and then have informed discussions with United Voice. And as I said, I actually called because yesterday you said in a comment, the minister probably hasn't cleaned anything in his life. Well, let me assure you, Chris...
Have you cleaned a school dunny?
Let me assure you, Chris, this is why I called you this morning. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. You know, when I was a young boy, I used to work on my father's and my mother's farm, and we worked really hard manual labour. Great,
but you've never cleaned a school dunny, have you?
I've done worse than that.
Have you spoken to the people who do clean school dunnies?
I had about 3 meetings with them, one including with the people that about 13 representatives there, and I was honestly listening to them, and I am very, very sympathetic to their plight, and that's why I personally intervened, because I know, as you expressed yesterday, that a lot of these people are great people doing difficult jobs, and quite frankly, we rely on them to do those difficult jobs. In fact, my grandparents and my great-uncles and aunts, when they came to this blessed country 70 or 80 odd years ago, they worked in factories, they had low-grade type work, and they worked hard to give me the opportunity I've got today.
So hopefully you get the fact that they need their jobs. You get it.
I get it, but I cannot make a decision that is a responsible decision until I get all the information.
But why do we even want to reform the school cleaning program? It's not the NBN.
Chris, all we've got to do is every 5 or 6 years the contract expires. The contract expired in 2011, and when the last Labor government put their contracts out for tender, and then when the tenders come back, they make a decision, and negotiations are then concluded. We're going through the same process.
Okay, all right. You're looking at it again. I get it. But I want to ask one question. You say the New South Wales government spends over $400 million a year on cleaning contracts.
That's right.
I did my sums on the back of an envelope this morning. It may be wrong. 7,000 cleaners, $19 an hour would cost the government, just a brief calculation on my mobile phone, $5.2 million a week over the course of the year, a total of $270 million. That's what it costs. You spend $400 million. Where's the rest of the money going?
Well, we don't employ the cleaners. That has been contracted out about 24 years ago to contractors. So maybe the contractors are getting a bit of fat, and that's why we are putting them out for tender to see if we can take some money off the contractors, not the cleaners. The cleaners are protected by industrial awards. So, as I said, Chris, no decision has been made. I am very sympathetic to the great work that the cleaners do, and that's why I personally got involved. I've had 3 meetings with them. They are good people. They are doing the right thing, but I can't make a responsible decision on behalf of the taxpayer until I've got all the information in front of me.
Okay, you'll receive responses from tenderers tomorrow, I understand, and we'll have more to say following that. What does that mean?
Well, obviously, the department's going to go through, crunch the numbers, and then we're going to have meaningful dialogue. But I can assure you that I will conduct this in good faith, and I've already indicated that I'm very, very sympathetic to the great cleaners out there that do enormous work under very difficult circumstances.
Will any of them lose their jobs?
Hello?
Will any of them lose their jobs?
I can't see a situation where a cleaner in New South Wales is going to be in peril of their employment in circumstances where we are building 120 new schools and 1,500 new classrooms. What we are doing is we are creating more jobs, not less.
Okay, so these cleaners won't lose their jobs?
Well, as I said, Chris, there might be individual circumstances. They're going to be protected by industrial agreements. But
so they will. Some will lose their jobs.
Chris, I can't answer for 7,000 cleaners.
But given what you've just told me about all that infrastructure being built in the education system, it makes sense to me that you could easily guarantee the fact that these people who are working on dunnies in schools this morning won't lose their jobs.
Well, again, that's what we're working towards, but I can't make that decision until I get the information on the 15th.
All right. Well, watch very, 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 very closely. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
You're most welcome.
New South Wales Minister for Finance Services and Innovation, Victor Dominello. These people don't have the opportunity that I have here to speak with the Minister and try and get some decent answers from questions that they would love to ask. So I'm doing it on their behalf, and I make no apology for being a tad aggressive, but seriously. These are the people in our society that clean school dunnies and get $19 an hour. Look after them. For God's sake, 24 minutes after 7, 24 minutes after 6 in Queensland.
Chris Smith, right across Australia.
If you believe the New South Wales government, then its new container deposit scheme is the best thing since sliced bread. Is that true? Well, billions of containers recovered to prevent us all drowning in a sea of plastic. But how about the other side of the coin? Just before the end of the program yesterday, we had a call off air from Bob Matthews. He owns 4 IGA grocery stores in Albury, down on the Victorian border. He reckons the scheme is a debacle. He owns 4 IGA stores, remember? It's something that's made his business look like Steptoe and Son and turned it, in his words, into the biggest bloody automatic teller machine in town. Bob Matthews is on the line. Hi there, Bob.
Morning, Chris.
How the hell did you get involved in this debacle?
Well, I mean, I think we all know that it's been the rollout's been appalling. I mean, for every punter in New South Wales, if they happen to recycle their cans, it costs them 3 cents. Anyone like me who's not going to put my cans through container deposits, it's costing me $4 or $5 a carton. But look, the problem, I got an RVN. I didn't really ask for one, but they came to me and they said, Bob, we can't have any others in Albury. Can you have one? I said, well, all right. And they said the basis of which I was going to get it was the fact that sort of it would create lots of foot traffic. That's the only thing. I get paid nothing. I get paid nothing for the machine. I get paid, I have to pay the electricity. There's no money for me at all. However, foot traffic is what it's going to be. What's happened is that the machine's been put on my car park, and there's another story there. Filthy, dirty rubbish is left around the place. I have to go there every morning. I'm running late this morning, but I go up there, I have to clean up every morning. Broken glass, stinking rotten, all over in my car park.
Yeah, a dump.
A dump. It's become a dump. I've had an extra blue bin put out the front just to put rubbish in, so I do look like Steptoe and Sons now. And then what happens on top of that is that sort of that we had our second fight yesterday. There's fights occurring between the people. People are coming with hundreds and hundreds of cans. So I call them the scavengers. I don't mind them. They're probably very nice people, but that's what they do for a living. They go around cans wherever they can and put them through the machines. They turn up with 1,000 cans, and some bloke turns up with his little daughter who wants to put them in, and these. You know, the language is appalling, and the father goes away. He won't be back again. No, he's not going to bring his little daughter back.
Wouldn't bother, would he?
Never. And and what happens? Customers, yes, these people, they put their cans through, they walk into my supermarket, and 80% of them want cash out. That's all they want. They want their money out. So we have become the largest ATM in Albury, and it's just appalling. We've got the contract. If it keeps going like this, I'm going to pull the pin. I'm not going to have this happening to my customers. But the worst thing on the border, Chris, the worst thing is the New South Wales government's given the Victorian retailers a massive Christmas because we're now $4 to $5 per carton more expensive than across the border. I can see Wodonga from where I am. And right across the border, from here to Wentworth, there's retailers in New South Wales. I represent about 22 retailers, turning over well over $500 million a year. We've all suffered massive losses. This is only retailers.
So hang on, so people in New South Wales are saying, bugger that, I'm going over to the other side of the border in Victoria to buy their beer and drinks and everything else.
Absolutely. And when they come back, guess what? They put these Victorian cans through my recycling.
Oh. Well, I don't want to get stuck into you, but you could have seen this coming, I guess. Well, but you've got to get out of this quick smart because it's not doing you any good at all.
We've got a meeting next week. I mean, I met the Premier recently. We had she came down to Albury for a cabinet meeting, and there was a group of us. We had a sign up saying, we are collateral damage. And she came and talked to me, and she sort of said, righto, I'm going to send the small business. Now, the Small Business Commission is coming down next week. We've got a meeting. She's restricted significantly the number of people that can go to the meeting, but we're going to be there. There's I've been invited, plus 4 other guys. We're going to try to explain what's happening. We've got some empirical evidence of the effect it's having on our business.
Okay, so with 30 seconds left, I know the Minister will be listening to this because she's heard all the negative via this radio station for about 4 weeks, especially from Alan and Ray. Can you give a message to the Minister about her program?
Look, I think the problem, it's an interesting issue. We all love recycling. I have no troubles with that. The problem is that what we should have done is follow the South Australian model. Really, it would be far better. The people that should be looking should be councils, it should be recyclers. That's the people that should they're organised for it, but not us poor bloody
Leave the retailers right out of it. You're exactly right. It needs to be scrapped and it should start all over again. Thank you, Bob. All the very best.
Thanks, mate.
Albury IGA owner Bob Matthews.
Chris Smith filling in for Alan Jones. Thanks to Vodafone. Want a no-lock-in contract? See vodafone.com.au/plans. T's and C's apply.
20 to 8, 20 to 7 in Queensland. Well, here we go. What are your immediate memories of the 1970s? The decade of disco music, maybe? The era of outlandish fashion and kitsch gadgets all around the house? What about mullet hairdos, flared jeans, fondues, sideburns and sunburn? It was all of that and maybe a degree of careless parenting to boot, to be truthful. Well, next month, an Australian movie will hit the big screen called Swinging Safari. And yes, it's a comedy which depicts what many of us were exposed to and enjoyed during the height of summer in the mid-70s. And what a cast. The men include Guy Pearce from Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, Julian McMahon and Jeremy Sims. while their on-screen wives include the world-famous Kylie Minogue, Asha Keddy from Offspring, and Hollywood actress Radha Mitchell. Now, I was lucky enough to interview all 6 stars this week. First the blokes, then the women, and don't they have some awkward memories of the 1970s in Australia? Julian McMahon, Guy Pearce, Jeremy Sims, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm really disappointed because you have exposed all of us 70 kids to the truth about our upbringing. I want to know how we survived.
Yeah, we want to know how we survived as well. I think we all had the same experience.
Toughened us up. Chris, it toughened us up.
It was like being thrown into a sort of a deep, dark therapy session where there was no answers.
Yeah.
Going,
the weird thing is, no one on the film said, "Oh, it wasn't like that." Like everyone went, "Yep, that's exactly it. That's exactly what it was like."
And I actually saw things on the sets that I reckon you stole from my mother and father's lounge room and their bar. What production.
Yeah, I think Colin Gibson, our art director, did a pretty amazing job of capturing, I mean, not just the colour, etc., but the bizarre sort of shapes of furniture and lamps and
the things that we prioritised needing in the 70s were, you know, like we needed, what's
a
that?
bar. Every house had a bar in it.
Your wife's on the, getting a,
vibrating. That's right.
It was mayhem in almost every scene. Like, Julian, I can't remember too many scenes where things weren't absolutely destroyed or broken or crashed down. Was it like that when you were shooting?
It was pretty crazy. I mean, I don't know what the total number of cast were, but probably around about 30. And there were some times where Steph was, you know, screaming at 30 actors on screen to do different things, and it was crazy. But I remember growing up, and, you know, the rumpus room as kids
full of kids
was freaking crazy.
Yeah. And I think the thing with this
stuff got busted, and it just
and they locked the door.
You even threw people through the window or something. You'd be like, "Oh, you know, the parents won't even find out. The parents wouldn't know until you know a year later. How did this window?"
Yeah, and someone was kissing the girl next door.
Yeah.
There was no curfew. You had 6 buckets of chips of glass.
Their father's slug gun and was shooting
them.
Totally.
My dad had a double-barrel shotgun. I knew exactly where to go and get that from.
Jeremy, those sideburns, those chops, as we used to call them.
They're the real thing, baby.
Oh.
That's not in the makeup, man.
Wow.
I grew them on the flight back to Australia from Europe.
And there's nothing like a fondue and 1,000 drinks in the middle of the 70s. Like it can lead anywhere, really, can't it?
Well, and lead one place, actually.
Yeah. And this was my next question. Between the three of you, you've probably created the ugliest sex scene that anyone's seen in Australian film.
Well, sex scenes, I mean...
That was Guy who came up with that ugly thing.
Sex can be a bit ugly sometimes, can't it? It's never as glamorous and as beautiful as it is in the movies.
I thought my bit was really sexy, actually. I thought...
No, you were twirling around on the table. That was classy.
Weren't you spinning Kylie around in a perspex hanging...
Try putting a woman in a hanging chair.
I was busy with Radha. I was busy with Radha on the floor.
Two ticks.
Kylie looked like she was being legitimately traumatised by it all.
Yeah. I couldn't get her to put the tab can down. That was the problem.
Exactly.
Now, how do you reckon, this is just one for the girls, because although you're separated here, I did want to get you to say something about them. How do you think Kylie and Asha and Radha would fit in the 70s, do you think, legitimately?
Smashingly.
Yes, fantastic.
Typecasting, I'd call
that. Proved it, haven't they, really?
Yeah, they've all got the hair for it.
I don't know, I mean, the 70s was such
Kylie's
an
done a pretty,
attitude.
Kylie's knocked out the 70s look pretty well.
Yeah, that's true.
Any kid, and any one of us, anybody that grew up in that time, I think, could suit it. I mean, we decided to turn in a more conservative way as a culture, but if it didn't get so reckless, quite so reckless, I could see us all kind of living there to a certain extent. I mean,
not a bad place
there was some pretty good stuff.
It was the pendulum swinging back the other way, wasn't it, after the conservative 50s, you know, pendulum swinging that back that way, and now we're going, okay, hang on a second, let's all try and be a bit more politically correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think exactly.
Back that way a little bit.
But the same thing is, I think there are, in the burbs of Australia, people still living in that decade.
Well, the houses that were shot in
are real. Right. So they've got the two dolphins out the front, have they?
And I grew up in a house in Queensland in the 70s, and they have not changed at all. Right. Some of them obviously have. Queensland.
The plastic to look like glass on the front of the bar.
There's some real time warp houses, as we know, still in existence.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do question which one looks better.
No.
I know where it is, whole modern thing, right? But come on, there was some classic stuff.
The thing you forget about 70s, things didn't have to be as big in those days. So a cool 70s house.
But they also
had
had
3
an
bedrooms and a living room
of individualism and
Sure.
kind of expression and kind of like.
But
now
now
you go with
everything's
stuff that's
massive
beautiful
though
and
now.
it's whatever,
Yeah.
but it's, at the same time, it's all pretty similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of orange.
A lot of
orange. Yes. Green and orange.
Green and orange.
Greens and
Did we drink, or did our parents drink that much? No, I don't want you to dob on your own parents.
Yeah,
but
mine did.
I do, yes. They did.
Sorry.
Yeah.
My parents did.
I remember my mum drinking sherry every night, thinking, oh, that's what you do when you're an adult. You drink sherry.
Had an early start to drinking too.
I can remember the wine bottles, because back then they were corks, too. There weren't any screw tops.
No.
And mum and dad and their friends, who a lot of them were English, so they drank wine. We're in WA at the beginnings of the West Australian wine industry. And I can just remember in the morning all the corks
everywhere.
Just corks everywhere. And I used to collect them all to make, boats and toys and shit, stuff out of them.
I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing. But Benine, Matus,
Blue Nun.
Blue Nun, Black Tower.
There you go. Emu Bitter.
Emu Bitter. Chateau Nuila, Waka Waka.
Can I please go to the present time? Thank you very much. Congratulations on a wonderful contribution to 70s kitsch.
Yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure.
Julian McMahon, Guy Pearce and Jeremy Sims.
What the hell happened in the 1970s? Let's go back and meet 3 rudderless families. The Joneses were the big kahunas on the block.
Somebody's going to get hurt and it's not going to be me.
The Hall House was a disaster movie in the making.
Welcome to the club, men.
My family was stuck right in the middle of the cul-de-sac. I was armed with a Super 8 camera.
What you got there, love? Look at that.
No cameras tonight?
I captured everything
Oh, I think I'm gonna hurl.
in the hope I could edit together
The next game is called Swinging Safari.
I'm in. What was going through our poor, misguided heads.
Why were they doing that to each other?
I don't know. We just go to school like normal. And what are we playing? Poker. Everybody else has. Cork and bush pig. Shut up, hussy.
Alcoholic bottle blonde.
Cock tease.
Our parents did the best they could with the bent tools they were handed.
Looks like you might have found yourself a plot, Tiger. We're all going to Catholic boarding schools. The priests will have their way with you.
Rada Mitchell, Asher Kitty, Kylie Minogue, thank you so much for giving us this time.
Thank you.
How did you end up with husbands like that? They're an ugly bunch of bogans in that movie. Aren't they, really?
Hey, you haven't even seen them in their Speedos.
I don't
in
think
their
I want
nightwear.
to. I want to get straight to the sex scene, if I may.
Why not? Please do.
I reckon it was about as ugly a sex scene as you'll ever find on Australian film, apart from you 3.
Oh, come on. It was tasteful, though, sort of.
Tasteful? Yeah.
Wait. Julian had his
What was he
his
wearing?
Reggies and his platforms on. Right.
Do you see the platform, Julian's platforms with his?
He kept his shoes on.
I can't tell
He
you
kept
how
his
hard
shoes
it was to shoot. I copped the worst of it.
Really?
Obviously. Well, I was partnering with his character in that scene.
You were on the Lazy Susan,
I was on the
right?
Lazy Susan.
Spinning around. And
Yeah.
he's like
And he-
6'3" in platforms,
Yeah,
so he's like
platforms
7
and
foot
undies
tall.
I know. What a turn off.
It was just pretty. It was
was
just
hot.
too funny.
And Kylie, your character looked like as if you were sort of playing Twister with a woolly mammoth, really. Those chops.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah, well,
sideburns.
actually, to be fair, Jeremy Sims does deserve a round of applause for that camel jumpsuit. That was
Extraordinary.
very,
I think
very
Lizzie
brave.
Gardner was joking when she said she was just really trying it on when she asked him to
And he
have
went
a go.
for it.
And he went
He
for
did.
it. She was like,
Amazing. It was amazing.
I'm sure all 3 of you are far too young to remember the 70s at all, right? But having said that,
very
just
charming
imagine.
of you.
yeah, just imagine for a second, what was your favourite thing about the movie that when you walked onto the set you said, we had one of those?
Yeah, oh, so many things.
So
my
many
gosh.
things, yeah. Well, our first days were on that beach, in fact, and it was the fold-out chair, the esky. I mean, what we were wearing, I didn't exactly wear that when I was 8, but you know, I saw a lot of it.
Don't you remember being put into the rumpus room as kids?
Yes.
The door
Yes.
would be closed,
And
and
off
you
you go.
no curfew.
Yeah. Do what you like.
You could do what you like. It was out of control.
So much fun.
If there were after dinner mints on the table, you knew your parents it was a long night.
Yes.
And you could just go
The
crazy.
Tia Maria after dinner mints.
Dinner mints. Yes.
And the liqueur
that was so
Yes.
fancy.
Yeah.
Oh, individually wrapped. It was so fancy.
Wasn't it beautiful?
Well, fashion-wise, it was the decade taste forgot. Really.
Horrible.
Oranges, greens.
Did you? Oh, I love it.
I got the feeling you had far too much fun in this movie, and you basically should give your money back, you know.
That's how we feel.
You're probably right. We kind of figured it out, right?
Yeah.
We figured something out.
I don't want to give the game away, but there's a whale in this story.
Yes.
Now, how do you explain to someone you're about to see this 70s flashback and there's a whale in the movie?
There was a whale in real life. There was an attempt to get a whale off a beach, and I don't know is it a major plot point to explain what happens in the story? But anyway,
well, it's a big deal for the town.
Yeah,
big deal.
So it's based on truth.
Yeah, I understand.
It really
Based on
happens
truth.
somewhere.
Actually, importantly, everything is based on truth.
Everything is.
And that's what Stefan would always come back. Even crazy stuff that you'd think, surely not. He'd say, no, that happened.
I kept thinking when I was watching it, it reminded me of my Uncle Cyril and my Auntie June.
Cyril and June.
Yeah, June, Cyril, real people. But really doing what you guys did and staying up late at night and who knows what was going on around the fondue.
It
Seriously.
was never spoken about.
You must have enjoyed it, and that credit where credit's due. These three were fantastic. The boys were great.
They They would throw just ad-lib lines that were... it was painful sometimes, just laughing. I had to beg Julian... This is going to sound really wrong. I had to beg Julian to stop one night. Yeah, it sounds wrong. But I did.
So to speak.
I was like, no, it's hurting. I was laughing too much.
Yeah.
I cannot believe, Kylie, the character you played, so diametrically opposed to what I was expecting. You were shaking from the amount of alcohol you've had over the last 20 years and how early in the morning you drink your first, have your first drink, and then you were worried. It was just an incredible part.
It's great, isn't it?
Wasn't she?
Well, she was fun.
It was amazing casting because you just wouldn't think you wouldn't put Kylie in that character.
But I fell in love with Kay.
Yeah,
we all did.
Really.
And Radhi, you were the you were leading these women astray, really.
I had big ideas.
Yeah. Over the fondue.
From Another Land. What's that movie? Alice something, Carol and John or whatever.
With Anne Margaret and that's the one.
Jo Jones had seen that movie and she got inspired to host this little gathering, and all in good fun. And things just went terribly wrong.
Yeah.
The fact that they all live on a cul-de-sac and have to see each other every day.
Poor children.
Those poor children, I just don't understand.
I mean, look, the thing is that there's some pretty confronting footage in the film. But I mean, confronting moments for the children, like when the
whale.
children are seeing. No, the children are seeing.
Yeah.
What's going on? And they're
a family
confused.
movie.
Yeah, they are.
I find that really moving. I find, and quite uncomfortable at times, but I think it's really well placed in the film.
And how we've come of age, really, as a country, the way we treat our kids. Hopefully we treat them better.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe we didn't learn anything from it at all.
We're always learning. We're all experimenting.
Thank you so much for giving us the time. You were fantastic in this, and I encourage everyone to go see Swinging Safari. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Smith, right across Australia.
That was the best fun. Sitting next to Kylie Minogue and Asher Keddy and Radha Mitchell and the boys. Great fun. Now, if you have sleep apnea and use a CPAP machine, you'll know one of the biggest issues is the mask, right? They may fit poorly, leak, or are simply uncomfortable to wear. But Australian company Apnea Seal has developed a new mask technology that could transform the way you sleep. Apnea Seal uses a simple and quick 3D face mapping process to capture over 20,000 data points on your face, enabling them to develop a custom-made mask just for you. The result is a mask that fits the contour of your nose and face. It's your mask and yours only. It's exceptionally light and comfortable to wear. To book an appointment at your nearest Apnea Seal studio, call 1300 214 070. You've got to do this. apneaseal.com.au. Apnea Seal, 1300 214 070.
On the Alan Jones Breakfast Show, The Business Report with Ross Greenwood.
So, Ross Greenwood, the Commonwealth Bank and Austrac go to war.
Well, they really do in a big way. So it's not only the fact that the Commonwealth Bank filed its defence last night, it admitted that it had not filed more than 53,500 separate documents that were required when, of course, there's any cash transaction over more than $10,000. It must go to the Austrac organisation.
Yeah.
But today what's going to happen is that Austrac is going to level at the Commonwealth Bank another 100 allegations of wrongdoing in regards to potentially even anti-terrorism financing. So in other words, some of the people using the Commonwealth Bank and those automatic teller machines were clearly sending money overseas or indeed using it for organised crime here in Australia. It's a significant issue, but again, the Commonwealth Bank is admitting some things, but it's really trying to mitigate the actual cost of the potential penalty against it simply by saying it was one breach of technology that led to all of these separate accounts.
Kanye West. I don't think I'd ever speak to you about Kanye West, whatever his name is, Ross. What about his sneakers?
Well, I saw something phenomenal this morning. Pitt Street Mall in Sydney, one of the retail hubs of Australia, 7 a.m., about 400 people, all aged between probably 19 and 25, queued up. And I went up to somebody and said, "What are you doing here?" They said, "We're queuing up." I said, "What are you queuing up?" They said, "For a raffle." I said, "What's the raffle for?" They said, "For Kanye West shoes."
Oh.
I said, "Seriously?" So you're not even queuing up for the shoes. They're called Yeezy shoes. So Kanye West's new shoes, the Yeezy, out for Christmas. These people are queuing up for a raffle to win a pair. And I've gone, "You're seriously kidding me, aren't you?"
They're mad.
Jones Index up by 89 overnight, $76.2 US cents.
How many tickets did you get?
Mate, none. I'm not queuing up for that.
Thank you, Ross.
No problem.
10 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company today. The open line is all yours in about 30 minutes' time. And I've got another one of those retro mini digital radios to give away to one of our callers as well. So stay tuned for that. If I opened the lines this morning to invite listeners to tell me their national broadband network nightmares, I'm telling you the board would go into meltdown. It's happened to me too many times. Dreamt up by the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd on the back of a coaster and his then Communications Minister Stephen Conroy back in 2009, it's been an unmitigated disaster. It was supposed to deliver high-speed internet to 93% of Australian homes, the largest public works project in Australian history. The cost has blown out to $50 billion. $50,000 million. A Facebook post yesterday by someone close to the program here sums it up perfectly. David wrote, NBN technician number 12 rides off into the sunset and another failed attempt to give us a reliable NBN service goes down in flames. Scorecard to date, 12 NBN technician visits, 2 NBN modems replaced, 1 TPG router replaced, most of it not all connections replaced, and every centimetre of cable from the street to the house replaced as well. And still the dropouts continue. He's not the Lone Ranger, I can tell you. Another correspondent wrote to Alan earlier this year. He called the NBN the National Bankruptcy Network. While Rudd and Conroy dreamt up the NBN on the back of an envelope, it was subsequently inherited by the current Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull when he was Communications Minister. People are now finding they're being promised internet speeds if they sign up, only to find they're getting significantly slower internet downloads than they were promised. So once you've signed up to a network contract, you can't back out. Complaints about the service more than doubled in the final half of last year. I said when it was first announced, over and again, it was a white elephant, and I take no joy in saying I was right. People are signing up to deals and not getting what they're signing up for and what they're paying for. That's if they can get any signal at all. It's costing the taxpayer billions, and we're being ripped off. People should be marching in the streets over this. But you know why we don't march in the streets over stuff like this? We're too damn busy trying to keep up with the rip-offs and the price of living. Isn't that the truth, though? You know, most of us working too hard to try and keep our heads above water, or at least our noses, and those with a little bit more time on their side, they're the ones that go out and protest for every little tiny thing. And the rest of us just cop it. Well, the state's leading prosecutor has urged lawyers to stop doing soft-on-crime court deals with crooks, which is so heartening to hear. Mark Tedeschi QC who's jailed some of the country's most notorious murderers and thugs, has emailed all Crown prosecutors telling them to get tough. Now, the Telegraph reports the email comes after several cases resulted in paltry sentences, and bizarre decisions sparked public outrage. And he's been backed by his boss, Director of Public Prosecutions Lloyd Babb SC, as they seek to restore community confidence in the state's justice system. They've got a long way to go to get that. The move follows a series of embarrassments for the DPP, including widespread anger after a 55-year-old Dubbo pedophile avoided jail despite pleading guilty to raping and abusing 2 young girls. The man cannot even be named after the case's prosecutor obtained a suppression order. Mr. Tedeschi, the senior Crown prosecutor, wrote, "There have been recent examples of inappropriate concessions where the evidence did not warrant a concession being made." He wrote, "Inappropriate concessions should not be made." He urged prosecutors to remain robust and to challenge as far as possible any defence lawyer's claims. Someone is finally saying what we've been saying here on this radio network for years. Too often the crooks win, and the public is left thinking the legal system is weighed in the criminal's favour. Well done, Mark Tedeschi. You're 1,000% correct. Now, Australia's ambassador to China has reportedly been called in to explain the Turnbull government's new foreign interference laws. The Australian reports today, in a further sign of an emerging diplomatic row, Jan Adams was officially summoned by Chinese officials on Friday. It follows the announcement of proposed laws to bolster Australia's espionage laws and the resignation of Labor Senator Sam Dastyari over his relationship with the Chinese donor. You see, the Chinese want to play by their rules. We're not even in the race. Now, Dan Mullins from the breakfast program here told us this week, as part of his Bush Telegraph, about bats in the northern Queensland town of Charters Towers. More than 200,000 bats are holding the town hostage. I've seen the photos. It's incredible. Well, Bob Katter has blasted the Queensland government for not doing more to prevent this flying fox epidemic. The bats have actually closed down a local swimming pool, closed a kindergarten, playgrounds, closed parks, and dead bats have been found within the local primary school grounds. Now, bats carry all sorts of diseases. Hendra and Lysovirus, the Salmonella properties, you name it. Bob Katter is the local MP. He says the bats have completely destroyed the beautiful park in Charters Towers, which is at the centre of the town, and the 130-year-old Moreton Bay fig trees as well. The state government has told locals they will be prosecuted if they attempt to move the bats. The bats are protected. Isn't it funny? The bats are protected, but the locals aren't. 16 minutes after 8, 16 after 7 in Queensland. 'Tis the season to be winning, as we keep saying here. It is the 12 days of Christmas, and we're giving you the chance to share in over $20,000 worth of prizes. Today's prize, an 18-carat white gold and diamond Nova Medio pendant from Musson Jewellers, valued at $2,500. Perfect for everyday wear. It features an exquisite 0.3 carat Forever Mark diamond. And so congratulations to today's winner. One winner of the $2,500 gift, Kate Barrow from Cronulla. Well done, Kate. You've won this gorgeous Musson Jewellers pendant. If you'd like to share in over $20,000 worth of prizes, simply go to the win page at 2gb.com or 4bc.com.au and tell us why you love Christmas. But hurry, entries close at 11 this morning. You got plenty of time. Do it now, though. Today's 11th day of Christmas, thanks to Musson Jewellers. Make it a Musson Christmas with their e-boutique at musson.com.au.
Chris Smith, right across Australia.
All right, the debate continues over the rebuilding of Sydney's 2 major sporting stadiums. And as you know, Alan is a supporter of the plan, but it's fair to say not everyone is a fan. More than 140,000 people have signed a petition calling on the Berejiklian government to rethink it. Yesterday, there was talk of confidential financial modelling, I should say, that said to destroy claims that refurbishing Sydney's Olympic Stadium would be a better financial option than demolishing and rebuilding it. Today, we're told the Premier is using fantasy figures when she claims the cost of rebuilding the project represents only 1% of the spending they do on health. But this isn't the only debate going on about sporting facilities. Sydney Lord Mayor Clover Moore took to Twitter the other day to ask, why is our state government choosing to waste money on stadiums and a motorway that will actually increase congestion at the expense of vital community infrastructure? She went on, development is vital to any city, but it needs to be supported by key infrastructure, the schools, sports fields, parks and hospitals, all those growing communities need. And she said public funds should be used to support much-needed grassroots sports clubs and upgrading facilities in Western Sydney. Well, those comments have not impressed fellow Sydney City Councillor Kerryn Phelps, who's accused the Lord Mayor of abjectly failing to support sports facilities in her own area. Professor Kerryn Phelps is on the line right now. Kerryn, thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, Chris.
Should we start with a Merry Christmas and then move on to Happy Birthday?
Thank you. How did you know?
Well, we research here. We research all our interviewees.
Big day. HSC results out too.
Oh, multiplicity of things happening. Where do you stand on the stadium debate, firstly? Refurbish or rebuild, or refurbish one and rebuild the other, or none of the above?
I have to tell you, Chris, that with my background, with a science base, I like to see evidence. And when it comes to politics, I like to see evidence before I make decisions as well. So I do think we need to see a business case for either option, and I think that taxpayers of Sydney and of New South Wales really need to see what the business case is for either option. What do we actually need, and where do the priorities lie, and what is the cost of either rebuilding or refurbishing?
Yeah, and this business about X billion dollars flows into the coffers of New South Wales when we have state-of-the-art facilities. Where's that plucked from?
Well, I think you'd have to see a lot of people extra going into live sporting events in order to justify those sorts of figures. So, I think we need to really see an auditing of the business case before anybody makes any rash decisions about it.
Okay, so what did you think when you heard Clover Moore say public funds should be used to support much-needed grassroots sports clubs and upgrading facilities in Western Sydney?
I thought, are you kidding me? I've actually been speaking with Glebe District Hockey Club for most of this year about their desperate need for an upgrade of their hockey field at Federal Park. They're now in a situation where they are likely to lose their juniors because they're not allowed to play juniors on grass or degraded grass fields anymore. They have to have a synthetic turf because of safety reasons. And so they'll lose junior players, which are really the lifeblood of grassroots clubs, if we can't manage as a council to upgrade the field that's at Federal Park or provide a suitable alternative in the northern part of the Sydney local government area. You have these community groups. They don't just spring out of nowhere. They grow, they evolve, they come from community grassroots organisations, the work of volunteers, and for over 30 years, the Glebe Hockey Club has been asking for an upgrade to their facility.
30 years?
Over 30 years they've asked councils to upgrade to a synthetic turf. And now, this hockey club's produced hockey Olympians, New South Wales Sports Hall of Famers. It has hundreds of members. In fact, I tabled on council's meeting on Monday night a petition with over 800 signatures to support a synthetic multi-purpose field for the Glebe, Annandale, Rozelle area.
Beyond that requirement and that plea for 30 years, there was a City Council report last year, was there not, on sporting facilities, and the report found up to 20 new sporting fields will be required to meet the needs of the people of Sydney by 2031. Is anything being done in terms of building those fields and trying to catch up?
There is, but I think it's going to be really difficult because if you just look at an area like Green Square, for example, there are going to be over 60,000 people living in that area.
Yeah.
And they're looking at a sporting field, a multi-purpose sporting field for there. So people will still be jostling for space. And if you build one or two, and what we were told on Monday night was that there are going to be two multi-purpose synthetic fields built in the southern part of the Sydney area, but that doesn't make up for the fact that people don't want to have to drive their kids for a couple of hours in the Saturday morning traffic to get themselves to sport. I mean,
the worst traffic of the week, I might add, in Sydney.
It's a shocker.
And when you think about the obesity problems we have, the need for exercise, the need to take kids at a very early age outside of the computer and the study and get them outside and exercise, this is the time to do it. You've got to grab them early. And so if all these families move into places like Green Square, you've got to provide them the space to be part of sport.
You have to. I mean, it's important to have the parklands, and certainly the City of Sydney Council is planning about 40 parks in the Green Square area. But we also need to look at actual dedicated sporting facilities.
Yeah.
And it has to be adequate, not only for the growing populations in those new development areas, but we have to look after the established communities like Glebe, who have been crying out. You know, they've got the members, they've got the people who are active, they've got the volunteers.
So, Clover Moore, put your money where your mouth is. Stop talking about Western Sydney and what it should do. Do something about the local Sydney City area.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time, Karen. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, all of that.
Thank you, and you.
Okay, that's Sydney City Councillor Karen Phelps. Not afraid to take it up to Clover Moore. And about time too, 24 minutes after 8, 24 after 7 in Queensland. 3 minutes to news time.
The US Report, thanks to Peters of Kensington. Open 7 days at Barangaroo, Birkenhead Point and Kensington. Or shop online at petersofkensington.com.au.
Harley Carnes, how close are we to a deal on tax relief in the US?
Well, we'll probably have a bill to vote on by the end of this week. That's the plan anyway. It's on track to be unveiled. And the House and the Senate GOP leaders say they do have an agreement on this sweeping overhaul of the nation's tax laws. Now, the bottom line is, at the tippy top, there's only a tiny little tax break. They're going to come down 2 percentage points from 39 to 37%.
Yeah.
That's for the wealthiest people. Those at the bottom already don't pay any taxes, so you can't do much for them. The corporate tax rate will drop from 35 to about 21%. That ought to be really big for business.
Yep.
That could be a very good thing. Now, the Democrats are saying this helps the wealthy, and of course it does, you know, because the wealthy own the businesses, and of course they're going to do well with that. On the other hand, the top 50%, as I think I've mentioned before, pay 98% of America's taxes.
Yeah. That's the statistic that puts them in their place, isn't it? Tell us about the blame game that's resulted from this Alabama Senate vote.
Well, it's very interesting because the defeat of the former judge Roy Moore in Alabama for a seat in the U.S. Senate is obviously a stinging loss for President Trump because he decided late to support Moore, not so much as a ringing endorsement of the man, but for the simple mathematics of the Senate. Without Moore, with the election of Democrat Doug Jones, now the Republican edge in the Senate is just one vote. It's 51-49. And so unity's always been elusive. It just makes it even more important and even harder to get. That makes 3 major races, special elections to fill vacancies that have been won by Democrats over the Republican who was endorsed by President Trump. That's not good for him. I mean, it's a troubling message about his political capital and his coattails and that sort of thing.
Yeah, very, very true, mate, and he's got to work out a way out of it. Now, does the earth really hum, Harley?
It does. It does. You and I can't hear it. But all that stuff that's going on in the magma, deep in the core of the Earth, the 500,000 plus earthquakes that the Earth experiences, only about 100 do any damage, and 100,000 maybe that they can measure. It makes a humming sound, and they've recorded it now for the first time.
Like that?
It is, yeah, something like that. But if you or I do it, it's way louder.
That's right.
You and I can't hear it, you know, but they have recorded it. You know, I guess if they amp it up enough, we'd be able to hear something like Om.
We'll chase the audio, but you do it best, Harley. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Chris Smith filling in for Alan Jones, thanks to Vodafone. Want a no-locking contract? See vodafone.com.au/plans. T's and C's apply.
Drama for those on the M4 in Sydney's west heading into the city. Motorists travelling city-bound at Colleton are experiencing significant delays due to a 5-vehicle crash near Bennett Road, as you may have already heard. 2 of 3 city-bound lanes are closed. Traffic queued back to Mulgoa Road, the road you go to Penrith on, and motorists are advised to allow plenty of time. Can't allow plenty of time when you're stuck in it and you've had no time to plan or go around it, but that's just a warning for those coming in from that Penrith area. I've got another VQ Retro Mini digital radio to give away to one of our callers between now and the top of the hour, all right, courtesy of Commercial Radio Australia. It is a beauty, the Retro Mini digital radio. So we'll take some calls in just a short moment. I want to put a call out to try and find a mystery Good Samaritan before I go any further. A mate of mine, Steve, who's had a problem with his knee for many, many years and went in for a knee replacement operation earlier this year, finally got back to work on Tuesday after weeks and weeks off. He had a total knee replacement, right? Big operation. First day back, he's going along Glebe Point Road. He was actually at the corner of Glebe Point Road and Cowper Street in Glebe in Sydney. He had a walking stick to get him through, first day at work. It got caught on the footpath somewhere, and he hyperextended the same knee, would you believe? In all sorts of drama, had a scar that opened up completely. I can't even begin to describe the picture he sent me. It's awful. But a woman arrived from nowhere, a really good Samaritan arrived. She called 000, waited there with him while he was in pain, blood everywhere, waited for the ambos to arrive. It happened on Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning. He didn't get her name and wants to thank her. He's in Prince of Wales at the moment. If you are that good Samaritan and you were there, corner of Glebe Point Road and Cowper Street at 8:30, give us a call on 131 873. I've spoken at length today about Parklea Prison and what an absolute mess it is in at the moment. I then made the point later on that David Elliott, the prisons minister, set out some statement today about how good the security measures were at their state-of-the-art high-tech prison in Wellington, which I thought to myself was not on the priority list. David Elliott, the New South Wales Minister, has phoned in right now. Minister, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You wanted to make a point as a result of what I had to say?
Well, there's a number of points I want to make. The first one is that I heard the Labor Party in the last 24 hours saying, well, prisons should be handled by the public sector. The Labor Party handed Parklea Jail over to the private sector.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a decision by the Labor Party. They did not even consider allowing the public sector to run Parklea. They just handed it carte blanche over to the private sector.
So are you admitting that that was a wrong decision and it's a mess because of that?
What I'm saying, this is Labor's contract that I'm dealing with. Now, as I explained to Ray Hadley last week, and he quite rightly acknowledged it, is that the tender is up at the moment. I mean, we are now re-tendering Parklea Jail. So if I provide a running commentary on what's going on, I could expose the New South Wales taxpayers to a lot of money unnecessarily.
But that means that doesn't mean you can't do your job.
Well, I have done my job, Chris, because this year I put in a governor, a New South Wales Corrections Governor, Sue Wilson, one of our best in the system. She was the overseer when the problem started to arrive and become eventuated, and she made 34 recommendations on how the existing contract could be improved, and they are being actioned on. All 34 of them are being actioned right now.
You had a stabbing yesterday, though.
Well, Chris, as I've said to you before, and I've said to others, prisons are bad places where bad people go. I mean, I can't fathom to imagine what it'd be like to be incarcerated. And as I've said all along, whenever I visit a prison, I find 50% of them shouldn't be there and 50% of them should never leave. These are criminals. That's what criminals do. They behave badly to each other.
Building plans taken out of the jail by an inmate? How does an inmate get hold of that stuff?
Chris, I need to clarify that because there's been a lot of hype, and people, particularly the Shadow Minister, whose brother worked for Joe Tripodi. So I mean, he wants me to give him details about our security audit. It's the last person that I'd want security audits into. But the plans, that was a breach in security, but not a security breach. Those plans were of a portable building outside the perimeter. However, I'm horrified that any document put into the hands of an inmate, and that is why I've...
All right. Well, you can't say it because you don't want to upset the apple cart, but I can say it. Tear up the lease or tear up the agreement with that private firm and get Parklea in the hands of someone who knows how to run a jail, eh?
Well, the tender is expiring, and then that's what we're doing right now. We've got a number of companies that are looking at running the operation themselves. But for the Labor Party to come out and say to me, oh, well, this should be run by the public sector, well, they should have thought about that 10 years ago when they handed it over to the private sector.
Very, very true. Thank you very much for phoning in.
Chris.
Okay, David Elliott, the Minister in charge of all of that mess. He's trying his best. I'm hearing him, but at the same time, That jail in particular is just diabolical. Ross, go right ahead.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
I'm very well.
I watch TV a little bit in the afternoon when I get home from work. It sounds like Hogan's Heroes, that prison. They come and go as they please.
Yes.
And they've got tunnels everywhere, and they've got radios and maps.
Yeah, you can imagine Bob Crane there under the ground at Park Lee directing all the contraband and all the stabbings and all that goes on, similar to what we saw on telly.
And all respect to the minister, but I think Commandant Clint probably knew more what was going on than what he does.
Ross, thank you very much for that. Outstanding. I got a message from Neil Evans from betting.club about Bennelong. Now, he's running a book on this, and he's taken punters' money. Well, John Alexander has now firmed, because of this latest poll in the Herald today, to $1.48, clear favourite. That's from 160, by the way, 160 to 148. And Christina Keneally out to $2.50, and that was from 2.25. So he's firming John Alexander, according to the latest polls and according to those that are putting money on it through betting.club. Bruce says we won't have to worry about the heat today. Maximum temperature, according to Weather Zone in Kiama, where he is, will only be a balmy 30 degrees with a beautiful sea breeze. Sounds like the perfect escape from those in Sydney. I wish I was in Kiama. What a beautiful day in Kiama on the south coast. 131873. Judith, you're a school cleaner. Tell us about your plight.
Yeah, our school cleaning plight is up in the air without knowing if we do have job guarantee hours.
I bet it is.
Now, I'm one of the cleaners that met with Minister Dominello back in September.
Yep.
Now, he did listen and he did seem to be sympathetic, but he said to us he can't make any guarantees. The decision is up to the cabinet ministers. Now, we've contacted all the cabinet ministers, and all correspondence that comes back to us states this is Mr. Dominello's responsibility to deal with.
Yeah.
So ultimately, cabinet ministers are telling us it's Minister Dominello's decision.
Well, that's what he's admitted. He's not saying that it's not.
No, I know. Now, our big concern is, now, they've told us they want to maintain the standards in the schools.
Yep.
But how can you maintain the same standards in schools without the jobs guarantee and the guarantee of hours?
Yeah, and the guarantee of the same money per hour, because to suggest that you'd start playing with the rate when it's only $19 an hour is a nonsense.
Absolutely. Now, the thing is, each contract we have faced cuts in hours and different bits and pieces, and productivity cuts come through as well.
Yeah.
Now, since the start of the contract, when it was first privatised back in 1994, the amount of hours that has been constantly cut out of schools, that we're at the stage where we have nothing else left to cut except for quality. So that's where we're facing at the moment. Like, we either come into the school if we keep our jobs and try and do the best we can, but the standards and quality are what's our concern.
Yeah, look, the elephant in the room on this issue, Judith, and we only touched on it with the minister, are the subcontractors and the cream that's taken from the pie by the subcontractors, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so that is what they want to attack. I just don't think it needs reform. It's not the NBN. We're only talking about a small amount of money. You know, they're flush with cash in the government at the moment. Move away and go on to something more important. These are the lives of human beings that work very hard at stake here. Judith, can I get you that retro mini digital radio?
That would be awesome.
You've got it. The VQ Retro Mini Digital Radio is going to your house for Christmas. Merry Christmas, Judith.
Thanks, Chris.
And all the very best. I'll keep fighting on your behalf.
No worries. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you. 10 minutes away from news. Raymond writes in an email, excellent interview with that politician, Dominello. He calls him an idiot politician. Look, he's not an idiot, Raymond, but we've got to go hard on their behalf. Ray says, I will bet you every last one of those cleaners will have have to apply for a new job. So we'll old mate at the next election, and I bet he won't make it. So he's suggesting that the New South Wales government will lose as a result. Not primarily on the cleaners issue, but boy, they've had some black marks to their government, to this particular regime of late, the New South Wales government, haven't they? Dennis, hi.
Yeah, g'day, Chris. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very well.
Hey, mate, look, I'm from a private enterprise generational contract cleaning firm, right, over 60 years in the business.
Yep.
Look, the comment with respect to cleaners, yes, it is back-breaking people.
Yeah, I can hear a but coming, but...
However, if I look at the protected species being the public service and their productivity ratings as compared to what we're expected to do in private enterprise, they don't rate. If these people on their underperformance in general areas, and I'm speaking generally, right? You can't brand everyone the same, but if we had to pay the same amount of money and give the same amount of hours in private enterprise to the contracted sector of the schools within New South Wales, we'd be out the back door.
Yeah, I'm with you. And if they can prove that, though, I'm all for reform of the sector. If we're not getting value for money, you're dead right. But I'm yet to see the evidence of that as yet. But thank you very much for your call.
An Ashes Series cricket update with Michael Hussey. Thanks to Saxby's Stone Ginger Beer, the original and the best since 1864. And Red Rooster, dinner sorted with Red Rooster, pick-up or delivery.
The last ever game at the Wacker of Test cricket. Can you believe it? The first ball of the last ever game, 1:30 p.m. Sydney time, 12:30 Brisbane time. Australia leads 2-0 over England. Mike Hussey is with the Macquarie Media's Summer of Cricket team. He's on the line from Perth. G'day, Mike.
Good morning, Chris. How you going?
I'm very well. You'd be full of mixed emotions, wouldn't you? You know you've got this wonderful, wonderful stadium to go to from here on in, but the Wacker has been a wonderful nursery.
Yeah, you're right. There's a tinge of sadness, I think. To think this will be the last Ashes test at the Wacker. I think what people love about the Wacker is that pace and bounce to the pitch, and we're not sure what we're going to get for the new pitch. It's going to be a drop-in pitch, and it hasn't really been played on much at all. So, hopefully they can create something like the Wacker, but I don't think you can. It was just such a unique pitch over the years, and that's why so many people tuned in.
They're all saying Mitchell Marsh will be an additional bowler, Hanscom to sit it out. I'm not quite sure we think we're getting what we expect out of this pitch. So, therefore, is that a good decision?
Well, they haven't made their final decision yet. They're going to check out the pitch. There is a bit of grass on the pitch, so and that's what it's going to come down to. If the pitch looks really good for batting, then it looks like they're going to go for Mitch Marsh just for a bit of extra bowling to help out the other four bowlers. If it looks like it's going to be good for bowling, then they might stick with Peter Hanscom. So it'll be interesting to see what the think tank down there in the Australian camp do. But if it was up to me, I just don't think they need to change the team. Even though I'm a proud West Australian, when I see Mitch Marsh get a go, I just think the guys have done the job. They're 2-0 up. The bowlers have had a week off. It's not going to be too hot this week either. And so I don't really see too much need in changing the team. But, that's the selector's call.
And briefly, we'll win the series after this test, won't we?
I'm backing Australia in, yeah. There's a lot against England. There's history against them. They haven't won here in, I don't even know how many years, but it's a long time.
78.
78, yeah, I think you're right there. So it's a long time. Plus, they've got a lot of external stuff going on, which must be a huge distraction, particularly for their younger players.
Yep.
I'm backing Australia to secure the Ashes here in Perth.
All right, I'll be listening in and out and in and out. Thank you, Michael Hussey.
No worries, Chris. Have a good day.
Okay, will do. 2 minutes away from news. That's it for me. Thank you so much for your company this morning. Been a busy one once again. Ray Hadley is in next. Only 2 shows for Ray, I think, until the end of the year. I look forward to your company tomorrow morning. Have a great day. Keep cool, whatever you do. This is Chris Smith.